She was abandoned by her ex for being ugly, and years later she arrived with quadruplets and a billionaire husband. But no one was ready for the shock that hit when she stepped onto that red carpet. The world had mocked her, left her, written her off. And now, cameras flash, mouths drop, and her ex freezes. Because she's not just back. She's untouchable. But the moment everyone thinks they know what happened, a secret explodes. The powerful man who once threw her away now desperately needs her to save his career. And the sweet little kids by her side. They're about to reveal a truth that could destroy everything he's built. Why did the man who abandoned her suddenly come crawling back? What hidden power does she hold over the entire industry? And when her past and future collide on live TV, who will walk away unbroken? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The late afternoon sun streamed through the hotel suite's windows, casting a golden glow across the vanity, where Lainey Carter worked with practiced precision. Her gentle hands moved steadily as she applied the final touches to Blake Ramsey's makeup for the evening's gala. She could feel the tension radiating from him. This wasn't just another Hollywood event, but a crucial networking opportunity with major studio executives. "Hold still, honey," Lainey murmured, carefully blending the concealer under his eyes. Blake fidgeted in his chair, checking his phone for the 100th time. "Just make sure I look perfect," he said, his tone sharper than usual. "Thompson Studios will be there tonight. This could be huge for my career." Lainey stepped back, studying her work with professional scrutiny. She'd enhanced his natural features while maintaining a masculine edge, exactly the look that had helped launch his rising career. "You look amazing," she assured him, letting her hand rest affectionately on his shoulder. Blake stood quickly, breaking the contact as he straightened his designer tuxedo. "We should get going. Can't be fashionably late to this one." The drive to the gala venue was quiet, filled with Blake rehearsing potential conversation topics under his breath. Lainey watched him from the corner of her eye, noting how his knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. She wanted to reach over, to remind him that he was talented enough without all this pressure, but something in his demeanor kept her silent. The venue sparkled with camera flashes as they arrived. Lainey smoothed down her midnight blue gown, carefully chosen to complement Blake's tuxedo, and took a deep breath. These events still made her nervous, but she'd learned to mask it with a gentle smile. Blake's hand found the small of her back as they walked the red carpet, but his touch felt mechanical, his smile fixed firmly in place for the cameras. Lainey's engagement ring caught the light, and for a moment she remembered his passionate proposal just 3 months ago. Tonight felt different somehow, as if that memory belonged to different people. Inside, the ballroom hummed with Hollywood's elite. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow reflections across champagne glasses and jewelry. Blake's grip on Lainey's waist loosened as they moved through the crowd, his eyes darting between influential faces. "Blake, my man!" A rotund producer with a red bow tie waved them over. "And this must be the fiancé I've heard about." Lainey extended her hand, but the producer barely glanced at her before turning back to Blake. "The network's buzzing about your screen test last week, though I have to say—" He paused, swirling his drink with a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "She doesn't quite match your brand, does she? You know how image-conscious this industry is." The silence that followed lasted only seconds, but to Lainey, it stretched like hours. She waited for Blake to defend her, to laugh it off, to show any sign of the man who had promised to love her forever. Instead, Blake's laugh joined the producer's, hollow and cruel. "You know what? You're right." He stepped away from Lainey, creating a physical distance that matched the emotional chasm suddenly yawning between them. I've been thinking about that lately. This industry is all about image. And honestly? He turned to Lainey, his eyes cold. You're not pretty enough for my future. The room seemed to tilt. Conversations around them hushed, then swelled with whispers. Lainey felt dozens of eyes on her, heard the subtle clicks of phones capturing her humiliation for tomorrow's gossip blogs. Blake. Her voice came out as a whisper, but he had already turned away, engaging the producer in animated conversation as if she'd ceased to exist. Lainey's feet carried her toward the exit on autopilot, her vision blurring. She couldn't break down here, not with all these people watching. The cool night air hit her face as she burst through the doors, gasping for breath that wouldn't come. She made it to her car before the first sob escaped. Her hands shook so badly she dropped her keys twice before managing to unlock the door. Inside, finally alone, the full weight of what had just happened crashed over her. The man she'd loved, who had promised her forever, had just discarded her like last season's fashion trend. Through her tears, Lainey drove home to her small apartment, thankful that she'd kept it even after Blake's proposal. The night passed in a blur of packing, clothes thrown into suitcases, makeup kit carefully stored, photos of happier times left face down on tables she'd never see again. As the first hints of dawn painted the sky in pale pink, Lainey took one last look at her apartment. 3 years of building a life in Hollywood, of believing in love and dreams, reduced to what she could fit in her car. She didn't know where she was going, had no destination in mind except away from the humiliation, away from the whispers that would follow her at every industry event, away from the shattered pieces of her heart that littered the city like broken glass. She started her car as the sun began to rise, pulled away from the curb, and drove toward the highway. Los Angeles shrunk in her rearview mirror, the city of dreams becoming the city she needed to escape. Her engagement ring sat heavy in her pocket. She couldn't bear to wear it, couldn't bear to throw it away either. Not yet. Traffic was light this early, and Lainey let the rhythm of the road calm her racing thoughts. She had no plan, no direction, just an overwhelming need to put distance between herself and the nightmare of the previous evening. The tears had dried on her cheeks, leaving behind a hollow feeling that echoed with Blake's cruel words. Not pretty enough for his future. The words played on repeat in her mind as mile markers flew past. She'd heard similar sentiments before, wrapped in kinder words perhaps, but the meaning had always been the same. But never had they cut so deep. Never had they come from someone who had promised to love her, someone she had trusted with her heart. The morning sun climbed higher as Lainey drove on, leaving behind the city where dreams could turn to nightmares in the space of a single evening. She didn't know what lay ahead, but she knew with absolute certainty that she couldn't stay in Hollywood another day. The Georgia state line appeared just as Lainey's eyes began to blur with exhaustion. She'd driven through the night, stopping only for coffee and bathroom breaks, putting as many miles as possible between herself and Hollywood. Now, in the gentle light of late afternoon, familiar landmarks began to appear. The old peach orchard, the white steepled church, the faded welcome sign to Madison that had needed repainting for as long as she could remember. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel as she navigated the quiet streets of her hometown. Everything looked smaller than she remembered, yet somehow more welcoming. The historic district's brick buildings stood warm and dignified in the golden light, their weathered facades telling stories of generations who had found shelter here. Lainey pulled into the parking lot of the Sweet Dreams Motel, but couldn't bring herself to get out of the car. The thought of being alone in a strange room made her chest tight. Without conscious thought, she found herself driving toward Cedar Street, where Miss Dolores had lived for as long as anyone could remember. The 2-story Victorian home looked exactly as it had when Lainey was a child, meticulously maintained, with cheerful yellow paint and white trim, surrounded by carefully tended flower beds. Miss Dolores's ancient Buick sat in the driveway, a comfort as familiar as a lullaby. Before Lainey could lose her nerve, she walked up the porch steps and knocked on the door. Footsteps approached, and then Miss Dolores stood in. The doorway, her silver hair styled as perfectly as always, her dark eyes sharp and kind behind her glasses. Lainey Carter. Miss Dolores's face softened with concern. "Child, what's wrong?" The gentle question broke something in Lainey's chest. "Everything," she whispered. And then she was crying, really crying, for the first time since leaving Los Angeles. Miss Dolores didn't hesitate. She stepped forward and wrapped Lainey in a hug that felt like coming home. "Come inside, baby. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together." The next hour passed in a blur of tears and quiet confession in Miss Dolores's cozy living room. Lainey told her everything. The gala, Blake's cruel words, the humiliation, the midnight escape. Miss Dolores listened without judgment, one hand steady on Lainey's back, offering tissues and understanding in equal measure. When Lainey finished speaking, Miss Dolores stood up with determination. "You're staying here," she announced. "I've got a perfectly good guest room upstairs, and you need somewhere safe to land." "Oh, I couldn't impose—" Lainey began, but Miss Dolores cut her off with a gentle firmness that brooked no argument. "It's not imposing when it's family, and you've been family since you were knee-high to a grasshopper running around my Sunday school class." She squeezed Lainey's hand. "Now, let's get your things from the car. You need rest, a good meal, and time to remember who you are without that foolish man's voice in your head." The guest room was like stepping into a peaceful dream. Soft blue walls, crisp white curtains, and a quilted bedspread that Miss Dolores had made herself. Lainey sank onto the bed, overwhelmed by the kindness she'd forgotten existed in the world. Over the next few months, Lainey slowly began to rebuild her life. Miss Dolores introduced her to Sarah Beth at the Madison Community Arts Center, who immediately hired Lainey to teach makeup artistry classes and help with their theater productions. The work was different from Hollywood glamour, but there was something deeply satisfying about teaching teenagers how to express themselves through art, about helping community theater actors find their characters through transformation. Every Sunday, Lainey attended church with Miss Dolores, finding comfort in the familiar hymns and gentle messages of hope. Slowly, the tight knot of shame in her chest began to loosen. She started to remember who she was before Hollywood, before Blake, a girl who loved art and beauty and helping others feel confident in their own skin. One evening in late summer, the Arts Center hosted a fundraiser for their youth program. Lainey had spent the day helping set up, creating subtle but striking makeup looks for the student performers. As the event wound down, she stood at the refreshment table, watching people mill about and chat. "Excuse me," a warm voice said behind her. "I heard you were the makeup artist for tonight's performances." Lainey turned to find a tall man with kind eyes and salt and pepper hair smiling at her. Something about his presence felt steady, grounding. "I'm Elliot Cross," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "I'm a film producer, actually in town scouting locations for an independent project. The transformations you achieved with those young performers were remarkable. Subtle, but powerful." "Thank you," Lainey replied, surprised by how easy it felt to accept his compliment. "I'm Lainey Carter. Would you like to hear about our youth theater program?" What started as a professional conversation flowed naturally into deeper waters. They found a quiet corner and talked for hours about the power of visual storytelling, the importance of integrity in film, and the way art could heal and inspire. Elliot spoke passionately about wanting to make movies that lifted people up instead of tearing them down, that showed the beauty in ordinary lives and everyday courage. "The industry can be brutal," he acknowledged, But it doesn't have to be. There are still people trying to make meaningful art, to tell stories that matter. Lainey found herself sharing some of her own experiences, carefully edited, but honest. Elliot listened with genuine interest and respect, his responses thoughtful and encouraging. As the last of the guests began to leave, Lainey realized she'd completely lost track of time. "I should help with cleanup," she said, standing reluctantly. "Of course." Elliot smiled. "Thank you for the conversation, Lainey. It's been a pleasure." Walking home in the warm evening air, Lainey felt something she hadn't experienced in months, a gentle spark of hope, a quiet smile that came from somewhere deep inside. The world seemed a little softer, a little kinder than it had that morning. Miss Dolores was waiting up with 2 cups of chamomile tea. "Had a good talk with that producer gentleman, did you?" she asked, her eyes twinkling. "We just talked about work," Lainey said, but she couldn't quite hide her smile as she accepted the tea. "Mm-hmm-hmm," Miss Dolores hummed, not pushing but clearly pleased. "It's good to see you smile again, child. Real good indeed." Over the weeks following the fundraiser, Elliot found more reasons to stay in town. His production team could handle most location scouting, he explained, and the peaceful atmosphere of Madison helped him think more clearly about his upcoming projects. He began stopping by the Arts Center regularly, often bringing coffee and asking Lainey's opinion on costume and makeup design for his film. Their conversations flowed easily, touching on everything from childhood memories to dreams for the future. Lainey found herself looking forward to his visits, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, how he listened intently to her ideas about visual storytelling through makeup. "You see beauty in ways others miss," he told her one afternoon as they shared lunch in the center's courtyard. "You understand how to bring out someone's inner light." Miss Dolores watched their growing friendship with quiet satisfaction, always making sure there were extra cookies when Elliot came by for Sunday afternoon tea. "That man has a good heart," she'd say after he left, "and more importantly, he sees your heart, child." As summer turned to fall, their friendship deepened. Elliot invited Lainey to consult on his film project, valuing her artistic input and experience. They spent hours discussing character development and visual themes, their professional collaboration naturally weaving with personal connection. During winter, they started sharing regular dinners at the local diner. Elliot would tell stories about his years in the industry, not the glamorous parts, but the real moments of human connection and creativity. Lainey gradually opened up about her Hollywood experience, finding healing in Elliot's understanding and gentle support. "Beauty isn't about fitting someone else's brand," he said one evening, his voice firm but kind. "It's about being authentically yourself." Spring brought new projects at the Arts Center, and Elliot was there for every student showcase, watching proudly as Lainey helped young performers discover their confidence through transformation. Their hands would find each other during standing ovations, a natural gesture neither questioned. One year after their first meeting, Elliot suggested a picnic by the lake where they'd talked at the fundraiser. The evening was perfect, soft breeze, golden sunset, and the peaceful lap of water against the shore. After they finished eating, Elliot took her hands in his. "Lainey," he said softly, "this past year has shown me what true beauty looks like. It's in your gentle spirit, your creative heart, the way you help others shine." He reached into his pocket and knelt before her. "Would you marry me?" The ring was simple and elegant, but Lainey hardly saw it through her tears of joy. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." Their wedding 3 months later was intimate and meaningful, held in Miss Dolores's garden. Lainey wore a dress she'd designed herself, and her students from the Arts Center did her makeup, each contributing their special touch. Miss Dolores beamed from the front row, dabbing her eyes as they exchanged vows. The first year of marriage was filled with joy, but also brought challenges as they tried to start a family. After several months without success, they began working with fertility specialists. The process was physically and emotionally demanding. Endless appointments, hormone treatments, disappointments, and renewed hope. Through it all, Elliot was her rock. He held her through tears of frustration, celebrated every small victory, and never let her lose faith. "We're in this together," he would remind her, squeezing her hand during doctor visits. Miss Dolores kept them well supplied with comfort food and prayers. "God's timing is perfect," she would say, hugging Lainey close. "You just keep holding on to hope." Then one spring morning, Lainey stared at a positive pregnancy test with trembling hands. The first ultrasound brought shocking news. Not one heartbeat, but 4. The doctors were amazed, warning of risks but celebrating this medical miracle. Lainey's pregnancy became the talk of their small town. Her students at the arts center doted on her, bringing healthy snacks and offering to carry her supplies. Elliot transformed their home office into a nursery, painting clouds on the ceiling and assembling 4 cribs, while Lainey supervised from a comfortable chair. The pregnancy was difficult, requiring bed rest in the later months. Elliot worked from home, bringing her meals and reading to her for hours. Miss Dolores organized a rotation of church ladies to help, filling their freezer with meals and their hearts with encouragement. At 32 weeks, the babies decided it was time. The delivery room was controlled chaos as medical teams worked efficiently to bring 4 tiny new lives into the world, 2 boys and 2 girls, all healthy despite their early arrival. Later that evening, Lainey lay in her hospital bed, surrounded by 4 small bassinets. Elliot sat beside her, one of their daughters cradled in his arms. Her heart felt so full it might burst. "How did I get so blessed?" she whispered, touching each baby's tiny hand in turn. Tears of joy slipped down her cheeks as she looked at their perfect little faces. These precious lives were living proof that beauty could grow from broken places, that love could multiply beyond imagination. Miss Dolores peeked in, her face glowing with grandmother-like pride. "What did I tell you about God's timing?" she said softly, bending to kiss Lainey's forehead. "Perfect, just perfect." The morning sunlight streamed through the hotel suite's floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow across the elegant room. Lainey Carter stood before the full-length mirror, running her hands over the smooth fabric of 3 evening gowns laid across the king-sized bed. Behind her, happy squeals and giggles filled the air as Elliot chased their 3-year-old quadruplets around the spacious living area. "Daddy can't catch us!" little Marcus shouted, darting behind a plush armchair while his sister Sarah crawled under the coffee table. Lainey smiled, watching their reflection in the mirror as Elliot pretended to search in entirely wrong places, making the children burst into fits of laughter. James and Grace, the other 2 siblings, took advantage of their father's distraction to sneak up behind him. "Got you, Daddy!" they cried in unison, wrapping their small arms around his legs. "Oh no!" Elliot gasped dramatically, carefully falling to his knees. "They got me!" Lainey's heart swelled with joy at the sight. 3 years of parenthood had only deepened their love, and watching Elliot with their children never failed to remind her how blessed she was. Jordan Hale, Elliot's assistant, knocked on the door before entering with garment, bags, and a tablet in hand. "The hair and makeup team will be here in 30 minutes, they announced, setting down their load. "And the car service is confirmed for 6 o'clock sharp." "Thank you, Jordan," Lainey said warmly. She turned back to the gowns, touching each one thoughtfully. "Which do you think?" Jordan stepped closer, studying the options. "The red is stunning, but this emerald one—" They lifted the silk dress, letting it catch the light. "This would be magnificent with your skin tone." The emerald gown was a departure from Lainey's usual conservative choices, sleek and sophisticated, with a tasteful sweetheart neckline and a subtle train. The colour reminded her of the lake where Elliot had proposed. "Mommy, pretty," Grace declared, toddling over to touch the sparkly beading at the waist. "Very pretty," Elliot agreed, scooping up Marcus before he could use the gowns as hiding spots. "The green one's my favourite too." Lainey held the dress against herself, remembering the scared young woman who'd fled Hollywood years ago. That person would never have dared to wear something so bold. But she wasn't that person anymore. The next 2 hours passed in a whirlwind of activity. The hair and makeup team worked their magic, while Jordan kept the quadruplets entertained with colouring books and healthy snacks. Elliot handled last-minute calls about the charity gala, occasionally making funny faces at the children to hear their infectious laughter. "Almost ready?" Elliot asked, adjusting his bow tie as Lainey emerged from the bedroom. He stopped mid-motion, his eyes filling with admiration. The emerald gown fit perfectly, highlighting her curves while maintaining elegance. Her natural hair was styled in sophisticated twists, and her makeup enhanced rather than masked her features. Small emerald droplets sparkled at her ears, an anniversary gift from Elliot. "Mom looks like a princess," Sarah exclaimed, clapping her hands. "Better than a princess," Elliot said softly, crossing the room to take her hands. "You look radiant, sweetheart." Jordan cleared their throat, hiding a smile. "The children are all set." The quadruplets were adorably dressed in coordinating outfits, the boys in tiny tuxedos and the girls in pale green dresses with satin sashes. "Remember what we practiced?" Lainey asked, kneeling carefully in her gown. 4 eager faces nodded. "When we get to the party, be gentle," they chorused. "No running. And use our inside voices," James added proudly. "Perfect." Lainey kissed each small cheek, careful not to leave lipstick marks. Ready for an adventure. The hotel lobby was already buzzing with photographers when they descended in the elevator. Jordan went ahead to clear a path, while Elliot and Lainey each held 2 children's hands. The moment they stepped into view, camera flashes erupted. "Mr. Cross, Ms. Carter, over here! Can we get a family shot?" The quadruplets, used to attention but still somewhat shy, pressed closer to their parents. But their natural charm couldn't be hidden. Sarah waved shyly at a photographer who'd complimented her dress, while Marcus flashed his father's signature smile. Outside, their car waited at the curb. The drive to the gala venue was filled with excited chatter as the children pointed out twinkling city lights. Lainey felt Elliot's hand squeeze hers, his touch grounding and reassuring. The red carpet at the venue was a sea of cameras and reporters. As producers of the charity gala, they were expected to walk its full length. Jordan stationed themselves nearby, ready to step in if the children became overwhelmed. "Look at those adorable quadruplets! Lainey, you look stunning. Who are you wearing?" She answered questions graciously, keeping her responses focused on the charity's mission while making sure the children weren't stressed by the commotion. They were handling it beautifully, their sweet personalities charming everyone they met. Then suddenly, the crowd's energy shifted. New shouts erupted from the photographers, and Lainey felt Elliot tense beside her. "Blake Ramsey, over here!" Lainey's heart skipped a beat. She turned slowly to see her ex-fiancé stepping onto the red carpet, his movie star smile plastered across his face. He'd aged well, she had to admit, but there was something harder in his features now, despite his success. Blake's practiced smile froze when he spotted her. For a moment, raw surprise cracked through his polished facade. His eyes darted from her face to the children, then to Elliot, taking in the picture of family happiness before him. Recovering quickly, Blake flashed his teeth at the cameras, but Lainey caught the flash of jealousy in his eyes as he took in her appearance. She was no longer the insecure makeup artist he'd humiliated. Instead, she stood confident and beautiful, surrounded by love. "Mom, who's that man?" Grace asked loudly, making several nearby reporters chuckle. "Just another guest, sweetheart," Lainey replied calmly, though she noticed how Blake's jaw clenched at being dismissed so simply. The press was already buzzing with excitement, reporters speaking rapidly into their phones and cameras. The unexpected reunion of Blake Ramsey with the woman he'd publicly humiliated, now transformed into a radiant mother and wife, was too juicy to ignore. Elliot's arm slipped protectively around her waist. "Shall we head inside?" he suggested, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden hush. Lainey smiled up at him, genuine and bright. "Yes, let's. I believe they're about to serve the children's favorite dessert." "Ice cream!" The quadruplets cheered in perfect unison, drawing delighted laughter from the crowd and effectively stealing attention back from Blake's arrival. As they moved toward the entrance, Lainey heard the rapid-fire clicks of cameras capturing what must have been an irresistible contrast. Blake Ramsey standing alone in his expensive suit while she walked away surrounded by joyful family love. Lainey stared at her reflection in the hotel bathroom mirror, dark circles visible beneath her carefully applied concealer. She hadn't slept well, memories of Blake's appearance at the gala playing on repeat in her mind. "You're sure you want to go to this brunch?" Elliot asked from the doorway, concern etching his features. "We have to," she replied, adjusting her cream-colored blazer. "The studio leaders are expecting us both. Besides, I won't let him chase me away again." The quadruplets were happily occupied with Jordan, who had arranged a special morning of activities for them. Their excited chatter filtered through the suite as Lainey and Elliot prepared to leave. "Mommy, look what Jordan got us!" Marcus held up a new coloring book. Lainey kissed his forehead. "That's wonderful, sweetie. You be good for Jordan while we're gone, okay?" The brunch venue was an exclusive rooftop restaurant, its glass walls offering stunning views of the city. Several studio executives were already seated when they arrived, including Patricia Chen, head of Paramount's indie division, and Michael Robertson from Universal. "Lainey, Elliot." Patricia waved them over. "We were just discussing your latest project. The early footage is incredible." They settled into easy conversation about upcoming films and industry trends. Lainey was mid-sentence, describing a potential makeup design for an historical piece, when a familiar voice cut through the peaceful atmosphere. "Sorry I'm late, everyone." Blake Ramsey stood in the doorway, wearing an expensive suit and his trademark smile. Several heads turned, surprise evident on their faces. He hadn't been invited. "I hope you don't mind me joining," Blake said smoothly, pulling up a chair. "I heard about this gathering and thought it would be the perfect opportunity to discuss some business." Elliot's hand found Lainey's under the table, squeezing gently. She squeezed back, grateful for his steady presence. Throughout the meal, Blake kept shooting glances in their direction, barely participating in the general conversation. Finally, as servers cleared the plates, he made his move. "Lainey, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" His voice was carefully modulated to sound reasonable and professional. "It's about a rather important matter." All eyes turned to her. Refusing would seem petty and unprofessional. Lainey felt Elliot tense beside her, but she gave him a reassuring look. "Of course," she said calmly. "Just for a moment." Blake led her to a small private lounge adjacent to the main dining area. Through the glass walls, she could still see Elliot watching protectively. "You're looking well," Blake began, his charm switch firmly in the on position. "Marriage and motherhood clearly agree with you." What do you want, Blake? Lainey kept her voice level, professional. His smile faltered slightly. Right to business, then. I need your signature on some paperwork. He pulled out a folder. There's this incredible script. Oscar potential, really. But there's a small complication with the rights. What kind of complication? The rights are held by a small LLC. Blake's eyes fixed on her face. Your LLC, actually. Left to you by Marion Thompson. Lainey felt like someone had knocked the wind out of her. Marion had been her first mentor in Hollywood, teaching her everything about makeup artistry before passing away suddenly 5 years ago. She'd never mentioned anything about an LLC or movie rights. That's impossible, she whispered. I've got all the documentation right here. Blake spread papers across a small table. Marion left you everything, including the rights to this script. I just need you to sign these forms transferring ownership to my production company. Lainey's mind raced. Marion had always believed in her, even when she doubted herself. If she'd left Lainey these rights, there had to be a reason. I'm not signing anything right now, she said firmly. I need to discuss this with Elliot and review everything with our lawyers. Blake's charming mask slipped. Come on, Lainey, don't be difficult about this. It's just a signature. I said no, Blake, not without proper review. Just then, the lounge door opened. Sarah, one of the twins, came bouncing in, followed by an apologetic-looking Jordan. I'm so sorry, Jordan said quickly. She slipped away when I brought them up to use the restroom. Mommy. Sarah hugged Lainey's legs, then looked curiously at Blake. Her next words rang out clear and loud in the sudden silence. Is this the man who left you because he said you weren't pretty? Time seemed to freeze. Through the glass walls, Lainey could see several reporters who'd been covering the brunch reach for their phones and cameras. Blake's face drained of color as flashes began going off. The innocent question hung in the air, devastating in its simplicity, as more cameras clicked and phones recorded. Blake stood rigid, his carefully crafted public image crumbling under the weight of a child's honest words. Lainey watched as realization dawned in Blake's eyes. He had lost control of the narrative. The media wasn't just getting a reunion story anymore. They were getting confirmation of his past cruelty from the mouth of a child who had no reason to lie. Camera flashes continued to light up the room through the glass walls, capturing every second of Blake's visible discomfort as the chapter drew to its dramatic close. The elevator ride up to their hotel suite was silent. Lainey held 2 of the quadruplets, while Elliot carried the others, their tiny faces pressed sleepily against his shoulders. Jordan walked ahead, phone constantly buzzing with incoming messages and alerts. I've already ordered dinner, Jordan said, swiping their keycard. Pizza for the kids, grilled chicken and salad for you both, and chocolate milk, lots of it. Lainey managed a small smile. Thank you, Jordan. Inside the suite, they settled into what felt like a protective cocoon. The children, oblivious to the day's drama, happily munched on pizza while watching cartoons. Lainey sat on the plush sofa, her own dinner untouched, as Elliot gently rubbed her shoulders. You're handling this beautifully, he murmured. I don't feel beautiful right now, Lainey admitted. I feel exposed, raw. Sarah, the little truth-teller herself, climbed onto her mother's lap with chocolate milk mustache. Mommy, can I have more pizza? Lainey hugged her daughter close, breathing in her sweet baby shampoo scent. Of course, sweetheart. The evening passed in a blur of bedtime stories, goodnight kisses, and finally blessed quiet as all 4 children drifted off to sleep in the adjoining room. Lainey stood watching them, their peaceful faces illuminated by the soft glow of a nightlight. Come to bed, Elliot whispered, taking her hand. Tomorrow's another day. Sleep came fitfully, and Lainey found herself awake before dawn. Careful not to wake Elliot, She reached for her phone and gasped. Hundreds of notifications filled her screen. Social media messages, emails, texts from old friends and complete strangers. She began reading, tears welling up. Your story touched my heart. I left an abusive relationship because of you. Thank you for showing that our worth isn't determined by others. My daughter saw your picture. She said you look like a princess. You are beautiful. Message after message, women sharing their own stories of healing and hope. By the time sunlight started streaming through the curtains, Lainey's cheeks were wet with tears. But they were tears of gratitude. Hey. Elliot's voice was soft as he wrapped his arms around her. You okay? She showed him the messages. I never imagined my story would mean something to so many people. Jordan arrived as they were finishing breakfast with the kids, tablet in hand. The industry luncheon starts at noon. Several directors specifically asked if you'd be attending. Lainey hesitated. Maybe I should skip it. After yesterday. Actually. Jordan's eyes sparkled. That's exactly why you should go. People want to meet the real you, not just the woman from yesterday's headlines. Elliot nodded encouragingly. I'll stay with the kids. You should go. The luncheon was being held in an elegant restaurant overlooking the city. Lainey chose a simple but elegant navy dress, applying her makeup with the skill that had once been her profession. Her hands trembled slightly as she stepped out of the car. Inside, conversations hushed briefly as she entered, then resumed with increased warmth. A well-known female director immediately approached her. Lainey Carter Cross, I'm Patricia Martinez. Would you join our table? The next 2 hours passed in genuine, engaging conversation. No one mentioned Blake or yesterday's incident directly. Instead, they asked about her work at the Community Arts Center, her vision for storytelling through makeup, her thoughts on representation in film. Your humility is refreshing, one studio executive commented. This industry needs more voices like yours. By the time Lainey left, her phone contained several new contacts and promises of follow-up meetings. When she returned to the hotel, Jordan was waiting with even more news. 3 major studios have called requesting meetings. They're interested in your perspective on upcoming projects, both as a makeup artist and as a creative consultant. The children were napping, and Elliot was on a business call, so Lainey slipped out onto the hotel suite's balcony. The afternoon sun warmed her face as she gazed out over the city that had once broken her heart. But now, standing here, she felt different. The hurt wasn't gone. It had transformed into something meaningful, something that could help others. She thought of all those messages from women finding their own courage, of the genuine respect she'd received at lunch, of her beautiful family sleeping peacefully inside. The wind gently lifted her hair as she stood there, overwhelmed but hopeful, realizing that sometimes life's hardest moments could lead to its most beautiful possibilities. The next morning dawned bright and clear over the city skyline. Lainey stood at the hotel room window, watching the early morning traffic flow below, while Elliot helped the Quadruplets pack their small backpacks for their stay with Miss Dolores. I want my purple bunny, Sarah insisted, her dark curls bouncing as she jumped up and down. And I need my superhero cape, Michael added, already wearing his favorite red sneakers. Lainey turned from the window, smiling at the familiar chaos of their morning routine. Her heart warmed at the sight of Miss Dolores arriving, elegant as always in her powder blue dress and perfectly matched accessories. There are my precious angels! Miss Dolores opened her arms wide as all 4 children rushed to hug her. Thank you for flying in on such short notice, Lainey said, embracing her mentor. Miss Dolores patted her cheek softly. Child, I wouldn't be anywhere else. Now you go handle your business meetings, these little ones, and I have some serious cookie baking planned. The children cheered, already forgetting any separation anxiety as they gathered their things. Elliot's assistant Jordan arrived just then, tablet in hand and schedule ready. "Your first meeting is in 30 minutes at Paramount," Jordan announced, followed by lunch with Netflix executives, then Warner Brothers at 3 o'clock. As the children left with Miss Dolores, Lainey took a deep breath, smoothing her cream-colored blazer. The meetings that followed were unlike anything she'd experienced in her previous life in Hollywood. Instead of feeling judged or diminished, she found herself being actively sought out for her perspective. At Paramount, a female executive leaned forward across the conference table. "We're developing a series about women finding their strength through faith. Your story resonates with exactly the audience we want to reach." The Netflix meeting proved equally encouraging. "We're interested in authentic voices," the development director explained. "People who've lived through challenges and emerged stronger." Throughout the day, Lainey found herself sharing ideas she'd never dared voice before, about beauty that comes from within, about the power of forgiveness, about finding purpose through pain. Elliot sat beside her in every meeting, his quiet support giving her strength. The second day brought more meetings, more opportunities, but it also brought Blake. Lainey was walking back to her hotel room alone, having sent Elliot to grab some documents from their suite, when she heard rapid footsteps behind her. Before she could react, Blake appeared, blocking her path in the narrow hallway. "Lainey, please," he said, his voice carrying that familiar, manipulative charm. "You have to listen to me. Everything I've worked for is falling apart." She took a step backward, her heart racing. "I don't have to listen to anything, Blake." "The film rights." He pressed, moving closer. "Without your signature, the whole deal collapses. Do you know what that will do to my career? After everything we meant to each other? Step away from my wife." Elliot's voice cut through the tension like steel. He stood at the end of the hallway, his normally gentle expression hard with protective anger. Blake's confident facade cracked slightly as Elliot approached. "This is a private conversation," Blake attempted, but Elliot was already placing himself between them. "No, it's harassment," Elliot stated firmly. "And if you approach Lainey again without her legal representation present, I'll have security escort you from the premises. Are we clear?" Blake's jaw clenched, but he backed away. "This isn't over," he muttered, but the threat sounded hollow even to his own ears. That evening, after picking up the children from Miss Dolores and going through their bedtime routine, Lainey sat on the suite's balcony wrapped in a soft throw blanket. The city lights twinkled below, so different from the stars back home in Georgia. Elliot joined her, carrying 2 mugs of chamomile tea. "Want to talk about it?" Lainey's hands trembled slightly as she accepted the warm mug. "I thought I was stronger now," she whispered. "But when he cornered me in that hallway, for a moment I felt like that same insecure woman who wasn't pretty enough for his brand." "Look at me," Elliot said gently, taking her hands in his. "That woman was always strong. She just didn't know it yet. You rebuilt your life. You found your purpose. You created a beautiful family. Blake can't touch any of that." "I'm afraid," she admitted, "afraid that somehow he'll find a way to manipulate things, to hurt us like he did before." Elliot pulled her close, his steady heartbeat calming her fears. "Your past with Blake shaped you, but it doesn't define you. You're not that same person anymore, and he has no power over your future." Inside the suite, they could hear the soft sounds of their children sleeping, the peaceful breathing of their 4 miracles, the tangible proof of God's grace in their lives. "I love you," Lainey whispered, feeling the tension finally leaving her body as Elliot held her. "I love you too," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Rest now. Whatever tomorrow brings, we'll face it together." In the quiet of the night, wrapped in her husband's arms, Lainey finally allowed herself to truly rest. The fears that had gripped her earlier began to fade, replaced by a deep sense of peace. She was no longer alone, no longer vulnerable to manipulation and cruelty. She was stronger now, surrounded by love, supported by faith, and secure in who she had become. The morning sun streamed through the hotel suite's windows, casting warm light across the children's playful faces as they built towers with blocks on the carpet. Lainey watched them with a smile, grateful for these precious moments of normalcy. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, and she absently reached for it. The smile froze on her face. There on her screen was a TMZ headline, "Blake Ramsey's ex, the ugly truth revealed." Below it were photos she barely recognized of herself from years ago. Awkward teenage shots, unflattering angles, moments she thought were long buried. Her stomach churned as she scrolled through the article, each image seemingly chosen to highlight her previous insecurities. "Mommy, look at my tower!" called out little Sarah, one of the quadruplets. Lainey quickly locked her phone, forcing brightness into her voice. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." Her phone kept buzzing with notifications. She turned it face down, trying to focus on her children, but the damage was done. The photos were out there, spreading like wildfire across social media. By lunchtime, the family made their way down to the hotel cafe. The quadruplets, Sarah, James, Michael, and Grace, chatted happily about their morning activities while Elliot ordered their usual favorites. Lainey's hands trembled as she helped Grace with her napkin, acutely aware of the sideways glances from other diners who had clearly seen the morning's headlines. Her phone continued its relentless buzzing. Against her better judgment, she glanced at it under the table. The comments were brutal. No wonder he left her. How much surgery did it take to look like that now? Guess money can buy beauty after all? The words burned into her vision. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped her phone. "Mommy, are you okay?" James asked, his little face scrunched with concern. Lainey swallowed hard, refusing to let tears fall. Not here, not in front of her babies. "Just a little tired, sweetie. Eat your sandwich." Elliot's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently. His eyes held a mixture of concern and barely contained anger. "Jordan," he said quietly to his assistant, who was seated at a nearby table, "get me Richard and the legal team. Now." While the children finished their lunch, Elliot stepped away to take a call. Jordan moved closer to Lainey, effectively shielding her from prying eyes in the cafe. "Don't look at social media," Jordan advised softly. "It'll only hurt more." But the damage was spreading. Every time Lainey glanced up, she caught someone staring, whispering, or worse, openly pointing their phones at her family. The protective bubble they'd maintained around the children was starting to crack. Back in the suite, while Miss Dolores entertained the quadruplets with story time, Elliot met with his legal team in the adjacent room. His voice, though muffled, carried tones of controlled fury. "I want every possible legal action on the table," he insisted. "Harassment, defamation, emotional distress, everything. He's not getting away with this." The afternoon crawled by in a haze of anxiety. Lainey tried to stay present for her children, but each notification felt like another needle in her heart. The cruel comments multiplied. "She trapped a rich producer to upgrade her looks." "No amount of makeup can fix what's inside." "Once ugly, always ugly." But then, something unexpected began to happen. It started with a single tweet from a popular beauty blogger. Shame on Blake Ramsey for trying to humiliate a woman who had the audacity to grow into herself. Lainey Carter is gorgeous inside and out. Team Lainey. The hashtag caught fire. Within hours, thousands of women began sharing their own stories. "I was told I wasn't pretty enough to be a teacher. Now I run my own school." Team Lainey. My ex-husband said I'd never find love again because of my weight. Remarried 5 years now to a man who adores me. Team Lainey. Thank you, Lainey Carter, for showing us that true beauty comes from strength. Team Lainey. The tide was turning. For every cruel comment, 10 supportive ones appeared. Women began sharing their own before and after photos, not of physical transformations, but of moments where they reclaimed their power. That evening, after a quiet family dinner in the suite, Lainey helped tuck the quadruplets into bed. She read them their favorite story, kissed each precious face, and whispered prayers of gratitude for their innocent hearts. Once the children were asleep, she sat at the desk in the suite's living area, finally allowing herself to really read the messages that had been pouring in. Tears fell freely now, but they weren't tears of shame or hurt. They were tears of connection, of understanding, of healing. Dear Lainey, one message read, I was bullied all through high school for my appearance. Today I'm a counselor helping teenage girls love themselves. Your story reminds me why I do this work. Another wrote, My daughter asked me why that mean man said you weren't pretty enough. I told her that true beauty shines from how we treat others, and you shine so bright. Thank you for helping me teach her this lesson. Message after message filled her screen, each one a testament to shared experiences and collective strength. Women from all walks of life, sharing their stories of being judged, dismissed, and underestimated, and how they rose above it. Lainey's eyes grew heavy as she read, but she couldn't stop. Each message felt like a healing balm, washing away the day's pain. The desk lamp cast a soft glow as her head slowly drooped, finally coming to rest on her arms. Her breathing evened out, exhaustion claiming her at last. A final message blinked on her screen. You showed us that our worth isn't in old photos or cruel words. It's in the strength we find to keep going, to love ourselves, and to lift each other up. Rest well, sister. We've got your back. In the gentle quiet of the hotel room, surrounded by the peaceful breathing of her sleeping children and the loving presence of her husband, Lainey slept, her face peaceful despite the tears that had dried on her cheeks. The day's battle was over, and though Blake had tried to shame her with her past, he had instead unleashed a tidal wave of support that proved just how far she had come. The morning sunlight streamed through the hotel suite's windows, casting a warm glow across the breakfast table where Lainey sat with Elliot. Room service had outdone themselves. Fresh fruit, warm pastries, and the rich aroma of coffee filled the air. The quadruplets were still asleep, their peaceful breathing audible from the connecting room where Miss Dolores kept watch. Elliot reached across the table and took Lainey's hand, his eyes twinkling with excitement. I've been thinking about something important, he began, his voice soft but full of purpose. These past few days have shown everyone just how powerful your story is. Lainey tilted her head, curious. What do you mean? I want you to help lead my next film project, Elliot said, squeezing her hand gently. We're calling it Beauty After Brokenness. It's inspired by your journey, not just the pain, but the triumph, the way you've grown into yourself, found your strength through faith, and built a life filled with love. Lainey's fork clattered against her plate. Me? But I'm not. You're exactly what this project needs, Elliot interrupted softly. Your experience in makeup artistry, your understanding of true transformation, both inside and out, and your heart for helping others heal. You're perfect for this. Tears welled in Lainey's eyes as she processed his words. The idea felt overwhelming, yet somehow right. What would I be doing? Creative direction, makeup design, and consulting on the story itself. I want your voice to help shape every aspect of this film. It's about showing women they're not alone, that their worth isn't determined by someone else's judgment. Before Lainey could respond, the patter of small feet interrupted their conversation. 4 pajama-clad toddlers burst into the room, followed by a smiling Miss Dolores. "Sorry," Miss Dolores said, though her eyes sparkled with amusement. These little ones smelled breakfast. The rest of the morning transformed into a whirlwind of activity. While the children enjoyed their breakfast, Elliot's assistant Jordan arrived with preliminary project materials. They spread documents across the coffee table, discussing possibilities between wiping sticky fingers and answering endless why questions from curious toddlers. "We've already had 3 major studios express interest," Jordan explained, shuffling through papers. "Your story resonated with so many people, Lainey. They see the potential for real impact." Throughout the day, planning meetings filled their schedule. In between, there were precious moments with the children, building pillow forts, telling stories, and filling the suite with laughter. The quadruplets seemed to sense their parents' excitement, their energy infectious. Miss Dolores watched it all with knowing eyes, helping maintain order while letting the family's joy unfold naturally. "The Lord works in beautiful ways," she remarked during a quiet moment. "Sometimes our greatest pain becomes our greatest purpose." As evening approached, Miss Dolores offered to take the children to her connecting suite for dinner and bedtime. "You two need some time to celebrate," she insisted with a warm smile. "This is a big moment." Elliot had already arranged for a romantic dinner at the hotel's rooftop restaurant. As they rode the elevator up, he held Lainey close. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied, leaning into his embrace. The restaurant was intimate and elegant, with twinkling lights and a view of the city skyline. Over candlelight, they discussed dreams and possibilities, both for the film and their future. Lainey's eyes sparkled as she shared her vision for showing authentic transformation stories. "I want to help women see that healing is possible," she explained, her voice passionate. "That one person's rejection doesn't define their worth. That true beauty really does come from within, even though that sounds like such a cliché." Elliot watched her with admiration. "You're amazing, you know that? The way you've turned pain into purpose. It's inspiring." Their conversation flowed easily through dinner, touching on everything from practical filming details to their hopes for the project's impact. As they shared dessert, Lainey realized she hadn't thought about Blake or the tabloid photos once all evening. The walk back to their suite was peaceful, their fingers intertwined. They stopped to peek in on the children, finding all 4 sleeping soundly, while Miss Dolores read quietly in a nearby chair. She shooed them away with a gentle smile, insisting everything was under control. In their own suite, Lainey stood by the window, gazing out at the city lights. Elliot wrapped his arms around her from behind, and she leaned back against his chest with a contented sigh. "I feel different," she said softly. "All those years I spent feeling broken, trying to prove I was enough. I don't feel that way anymore." "What do you feel?" Elliot asked, his voice gentle. Lainey turned in his arms, her eyes meeting his with clarity and peace. "I feel whole again," she whispered. "Finally, completely whole." The city lights twinkled beyond their window, but the real brightness was in Lainey's smile, the smile of a woman who had walked through fire and emerged stronger, who had found love that celebrated rather than diminished her, who had discovered that her deepest wounds could become her greatest gift to others. In that moment, surrounded by the love of her family and embracing a future full of purpose, Lainey Carter was exactly where she was meant to be. The gentle morning sunlight had barely begun filtering through the hotel suite's curtains when urgent knocking jolted Lainey from sleep. She blinked, disoriented, as Elliot quickly pulled on his robe and strode to the door. Their 4 children were still peacefully sleeping in the connecting room, their soft breaths audible through the partially open door. Jordan, Elliot's assistant, burst in with a tablet clutched in trembling hands. Their usually composed demeanor was shattered, face pale with concern. "I'm so sorry to wake you both, but you need to see this immediately." Lainey wrapped herself in a plush hotel robe, her heart already racing as she joined them at the suite's small dining table. Jordan's fingers fumbled with the tablet before placing it between them. "It just started circulating an hour ago," Jordan explained, tapping play on a video. "Someone must have been recording that night at the gala." The footage was slightly grainy, but clear enough. Lainey's stomach dropped as she instantly recognized the setting, the Hollywood studio gala from 4 years ago. There she was, younger and softer, wearing a dress she'd spent weeks saving to buy. The camera angle captured her face in profile as Blake delivered his cruel speech. "I'm sorry, Lainey, but you're just not pretty enough for my future." Blake's voice rang out clearly in the footage. "My brand needs someone who matches my image. Someone more photogenic." The video caught every detail of her humiliation. The way her hands trembled, how her makeup couldn't hide the flush of shame spreading across her cheeks, the tears she tried desperately to blink back as whispers and snickers rippled through the crowd. "It's everywhere," Jordan said quietly. "All the major entertainment sites picked it up within minutes. Social media is exploding." Lainey's fingers gripped the edge of the table as she forced herself to read some of the comments Jordan scrolled through. The cruelty was overwhelming. "No wonder he dumped her. How did she think she was good enough for him? Look how desperate she was to hang on to him." Her vision blurred as she pushed away from the table, stumbling to the bathroom. The sound of her retching brought Elliot quickly to her side, his hand gentle on her back as she emptied her stomach. "This will blow over," he assured her, but his phone kept buzzing with incoming messages. Jordan appeared in the doorway, their expression grim. "The first sponsor just pulled out," they reported quietly. "They're concerned about the negative publicity affecting the film." Throughout the morning, the situation deteriorated rapidly. 2 more major sponsors withdrew their support by lunch. The Quadruplets, blessedly oblivious to their mother's distress, spent the day with Miss Dolores at the hotel's indoor playground, while Lainey and Elliot dealt with the fallout. Each hour brought fresh humiliation. Entertainment shows played the clip on repeat, dissecting every moment of her shame. Online trolls dug up old photos, creating cruel memes. Even some women's magazines that had recently praised her strength now questioned whether she had manipulated sympathy for attention. By evening, Lainey felt hollow. She went through the motions of their nighttime routine, helping bathe the children, reading their favorite bedtime story, singing their special lullaby. But inside, she was crumbling. Once the Quadruplets were asleep, their innocent faces peaceful in slumber, Lainey retreated to the master bathroom. She sank to the floor, her back against the cool tile wall, and finally let the tears fall. Elliot found her there, curled into herself like a wounded animal. Without a word, he sat beside her on the cold floor, pulling her into his arms. "I can't do this," she whispered, her voice raw. "I thought I was stronger now, but seeing that video, hearing those awful comments, I'm right back there, feeling worthless all over again." "You are not worthless." Elliot's voice was fierce with conviction. "You are beautiful, strong, and so incredibly loved." "The film—" She shook her head, wiping futilely at her tears. "I need to step away from it. I can't be the face of a story about overcoming when I'm still so broken." "Lainey, look at me." Elliot gently turned her face toward his. "You are not broken. You're human. And what you're feeling right now, this pain, this doubt, it's exactly why this story matters so much." But the shame felt too heavy, too familiar. Hours passed as they sat there on the bathroom floor, Elliot holding her while she cried. He stroked her hair, wiped her tears, and whispered words of love and encouragement, but couldn't seem to reach the dark place she'd retreated to. As midnight approached, Lainey's sobs finally quieted to shuddering breaths. She felt drained, empty, like she'd cried out every ounce of confidence she'd built over the past 4 years. "Maybe," she whispered into the darkness, her voice small and lost. "Maybe I really wasn't enough." The words hung heavy in the air, echoing the deepest fears she thought she'd finally overcome. Elliot's arms tightened around her, but for the first time since their relationship began, even his love couldn't chase away the shadows of her past. Sunlight filtered through the hotel suite's curtains, but Lainey couldn't find the strength to leave her bed. The mattress felt like quicksand, pulling her deeper into its depths with each passing hour. From the living room, she could hear Elliot's muffled voice as he handled one urgent call after another. "No, we're not making any statements yet." His voice carried through the door. "Yes, I understand the sponsor's concerns, but—" Lainey pulled the covers over her head, trying to block out the world. Her phone lay silent on the nightstand. She'd turned it off the night before, unable to bear any more cruel comments or pitying messages. The clock on the wall ticked steadily toward noon. She heard the Quadruplets return from their morning outing with Miss Dolores, their excited chatter a stark contrast to her dark mood. Their footsteps pattered down the hallway, growing closer to her door. "Quiet now," Miss Dolores whispered. "Mommy might be resting." But the door creaked open anyway, and 4 pairs of tiny feet shuffled into the room. Lainey kept still under the covers, not ready to face even her children's innocent questions. "Mommy?" one of the girls called softly. "Are you awake?" The mattress dipped as small bodies climbed up one by one. Gentle hands tugged at the blanket until Lainey had no choice but to emerge. 4 earnest faces peered down at her, clutching a large piece of construction paper. "We made you something," her youngest son announced proudly, thrusting the paper forward. Lainey pushed herself up to sitting, taking the offered artwork. Her heart caught in her throat as she studied their creation. Stick figures covered the page in bright crayon colors. 5 tall ones and 4 small ones. The largest figure wore a crown and held what looked like a magic wand. "That's you," her oldest daughter pointed. "See, we wrote words too." Sure enough, in Miss Dolores's careful handwriting guiding their own wobbly letters, a message stretched across the top. "Mommy is the strongest in the world because you can do anything," one twin explained matter-of-factly. "And you give the best hugs," added another. "And you make people pretty with your makeup magic. And you love us more than the whole universe." Their pure, uncomplicated love washed over her like warm sunshine after endless rain. These 4 precious souls didn't see her through the cruel lens of viral videos or mean comments. They saw her heart, her strength, her love. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but for the first time since the video leaked, they weren't tears of shame. She opened her arms wide, and all 4 children dove in for a group hug, squeezing her tight. "Thank you, my loves," she whispered into their hair. "This is the most beautiful present ever." Miss Dolores appeared in the doorway, her kind eyes meeting, Lainey's over the children's heads. The older woman nodded encouragingly, as if to say, "There's your answer, child." After several minutes of cuddles and kisses, Lainey felt something shift inside her, like a pilot light reigniting after a long darkness. She gave the Quadruplets one final squeeze before sending them off with Miss Dolores for lunch. For the first time in 24 hours, she stood up straight and walked to the bathroom. The face in the mirror looked tired but determined. She took a long, hot shower, letting the water wash away the remnants of last night's tears. Dressed in comfortable clothes, hair neatly braided, Lainey walked into the suite's living room, where Elliot was still fielding calls. He looked up in surprise, relief flooding his features at the sight of her. "I'll call you back," he said quickly into the phone, ending the call. "Honey, are you okay?" Lainey took a deep breath. "I'm not quitting." Elliot stood slowly, hope dawning in his eyes. "You're sure? The kids made me something today," she explained, showing him the drawing. "And it reminded me why this story matters so much. Not just for me, but for them, and for every person who's ever felt not good enough." Elliot crossed the room and pulled her into a tight embrace. "I'm so proud of you." They spent the next several hours at the suite's dining table, laptops open, outlining a strategy. Jordan joined them, bringing fresh coffee and their expertise in crisis management. "We need to control the narrative," Jordan advised. "Right now, everyone's reacting to that old video. We need to show them who you are today." Elliot nodded thoughtfully. "What if we arranged a roundtable interview? Not a hostile environment, but somewhere you can tell your full story, past and present. With the right moderator," Jordan added, typing rapidly on their tablet. "Someone respected, but compassionate." As they discussed possibilities, the quadruplets colored quietly at the coffee table nearby, occasionally bringing over new pictures for approval. Their peaceful presence helped keep Lainey centered as she faced the challenging task ahead. By evening, they had a solid plan in place. Elliot made arrangements for a televised roundtable discussion later that week with 3 well-respected journalists known for their fair treatment of sensitive topics. Lainey sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by her children's artwork, practicing the key points she wanted to make. The words came easier than expected, flowing from a place of hard-won wisdom and newfound strength. Being beautiful isn't about fitting someone else's brand. She read from her notes while her daughter added glitter to another masterpiece beside her. "It's about being brave enough to be yourself." "That's pretty, Mommy," her son commented, not looking up from his careful coloring. "Like you." Lainey smiled, reaching out to ruffle his hair. These moments, these simple, precious moments with her family, were worth fighting for, worth standing up for, worth being strong for. She returned to her notes, refining her message while tiny hands created art all around her. The sun began to set outside their window, painting the sky in brilliant colors that reminded her of her children's drawings, bright, hopeful, and full of possibility. That evening, after the children were settled with Miss Dolores for dinner and bedtime stories, Lainey and Elliot made their way to the hotel's private dining room. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over the intimate space, and soft music played in the background. A server pulled out Lainey's chair as they settled at a quiet corner table. "How are you feeling about everything?" Elliot asked gently, reaching across to take her hand. Lainey squeezed his fingers. "Nervous but ready. I keep thinking about the kids, though. How do we protect them from all this?" "I've already spoken with their preschool," Elliot said, pausing as their appetizers arrived. "They're implementing a strict media blackout policy. No phones, no outside discussions about any of this." "That helps." Lainey picked at her salad. "But what about other children? Their parents might say things." "Jordan's coordinating with a child psychologist who specializes in public figures' families," Elliot explained. "She'll meet with us tomorrow to develop strategies for talking to the kids about this in age-appropriate ways." They spent the next hour discussing logistics while sharing grilled salmon and roasted vegetables. Elliot detailed the security measures being put in place, including additional personnel to monitor the hotel corridors and screen all visitors to their floor. "The roundtable will be held at the local affiliate studio," he explained. 3 moderators, 90 minutes total. Blake's team insisted on his presence, but we negotiated strict parameters about interaction and topics. Lainey nodded, pushing her dessert around the plate. I just want to speak my truth with dignity. No mudslinging, no accusations, just my story. And that's exactly what will make this powerful." Elliot smiled encouragingly. The next morning began early with Elliot's PR director, Sarah Matthews, arriving at their suite. They converted the dining area into a preparation space with notes and talking points spread across the table. "Remember," Sarah coached as they reviewed key messages, "you're not defending yourself. You're sharing your journey. Keep returning to themes of growth, faith, and authenticity." They practiced potential questions for hours. When difficult topics came up, Sarah taught Lainey techniques for staying composed. Deep breaths, sips of water, brief pauses to gather thoughts. "What if they ask about my weight back then?" Lainey asked quietly during a break. "The photos Blake leaked. You own it." Sarah said firmly. "Say, yes, I struggled with body image like millions of women. And yes, those struggles were weaponized against me. But that's exactly why this conversation matters." After lunch, 2 trusted stylists arrived to plan her round-table appearance. They chose a sophisticated navy dress that made Lainey feel both professional and comfortable. The makeup artist suggested a natural look that emphasized Lainey's features without trying to hide or change anything. "You look like yourself," Miss Dolores commented approvingly when she stopped by. "Strong and beautiful." That evening, Miss Dolores and Lainey spent an hour in prayer together while the children played quietly nearby. They sat in comfortable chairs by the window, hands clasped. "Lord," Miss Dolores prayed, her rich voice soft but steady. "Wrap your arms around our Lainey. Fill her with your peace that passes understanding. Let your light shine through her words tomorrow." Lainey felt tears slip down her cheeks as the older woman continued to pray. The familiar scriptures and gentle petitions soothed her anxious heart. The next day passed in a blur of final preparations. Jordan arranged for extra security to escort them to the studio. The styling team arrived early to ensure everything was perfect. Through it all, Lainey kept returning to her center through prayer and quiet moments with her family. The morning of the round table dawned clear and cool. Lainey woke before sunrise, spending time in prayer while watching the sky slowly brighten. After breakfast with the children and countless hugs, she changed into her navy dress and allowed the stylists to work their magic. "You've got this," Elliot whispered, kissing her cheek before she left for the studio. "Just be you." The drive was quiet, Jordan beside her reviewing last-minute notes. At the studio, they were escorted through back corridors to avoid the growing media presence outside. In the green room, Lainey took slow, measured breaths while the sound team fitted her microphone. Finally, it was time. Lainey stood tall, smoothed her dress, and walked onto the brightly lit stage. Camera flashes exploded around her, but she kept her steps steady and graceful. The studio setup was intimate, 4 comfortable chairs arranged in a semicircle, with the 3 moderators already seated. Blake sat in the chair furthest from hers, his usual camera-ready smile looking strained and artificial. Their eyes met briefly before Lainey took her seat, adjusting her dress with practiced calm. The lead moderator, Patricia Chen, turned to face the main camera. "Good morning. Today we're joined by 2 figures whose story has captured national attention. First, I'd like to introduce Lainey Carter Cross, whose journey from makeup artist to emerging producer has inspired millions." Lainey felt a deep sense of peace settle over her as she prepared to speak. The cameras were rolling, the lights were bright, but she knew exactly who she was and why she was there. She opened her mouth, calm and steady, ready to share her truth with the world. "Thank you, Patricia," Lainey began, her voice clear and steady. "I'm here today because every person deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of how they look or where they come from. She folded her hands in her lap, conscious of the millions watching. 3 years ago, I was publicly humiliated at an industry event. The man I thought loved me told me I wasn't pretty enough for his future. Those words shattered something inside me. The studio fell silent as Lainey continued. I drove away that night feeling worthless, but God had other plans. Through the love of my community, my faith, and eventually my beautiful family, I discovered that true beauty comes from strength of character, not Instagram filters. Blake shifted uncomfortably in his chair. If I could just— Mr. Ramsey, Patricia interrupted firmly. Please allow Mrs. Cross to finish. Lainey took a slow breath. The recent leaked photos and video were meant to shame me, to remind me, and every woman watching, that we're somehow less valuable if we don't meet certain standards. But those standards are lies. Her voice grew stronger. I look at those old photos now, and I see a young woman who was hurting, who believed she had to change herself to be loved. To that woman, and to every woman feeling that same pain, I want to say, you are enough, exactly as you are. Tears glistened in the eyes of audience members as Lainey shared how becoming a mother to quadruplets had transformed her perspective. When I look at my daughters, I see pure joy. They don't care about designer labels or social media likes. They taught me that real beauty shines from within. Blake attempted to interject again, this time with rehearsed remorse. Lainey, I never meant— Please respect our ground rules, Mr. Ramsey. Patricia said sharply. Mrs. Cross has the floor. Lainey remained poised, never looking directly at Blake. My healing journey wasn't easy. There were days I could barely get out of bed. But through prayer, therapy, and the unwavering support of my husband, Elliot, I learned to love myself again. She smiled gently. That's why I'm helping produce Beauty After Brokenness. Not to shame anyone, but to show women everywhere that their worth isn't determined by other people's opinions, that God's love can restore what shame has broken. The moderators wiped away tears as Lainey concluded. If you're watching this and feeling broken, know that your story isn't over. Pain can become purpose. Rejection can lead to redemption. And sometimes the most beautiful chapters come after the darkest nights. As the segment ended, the studio erupted in applause. Crew members openly wept. Even hardened reporters dabbed at their eyes. Social media immediately exploded with support. Lainey Carter Cross just showed us what real grace looks like. Beauty after brokenness. Watching with my daughter. Thank you for speaking truth to power, our Lainey C. Cross. This woman's strength and dignity are everything. Hollywood needs more Laineys. In the green room afterward, Jordan showed Lainey the overwhelming online response. Major networks were already requesting follow-up interviews. Women's organizations wanted her to speak at events. Lainey's army was trending worldwide, but Lainey barely registered any of it. As soon as she stepped out of the studio, she saw Elliot waiting. His eyes shone with pride and love as he wrapped her in a tight embrace. You were magnificent, he whispered against her hair. Reporters called out her name, cameras flashing. But Lainey stayed in her husband's arms for a moment longer, savoring the victory. As their car pulled away from the studio, Lainey watched the crowd of supporters through the tinted windows. Some held signs. Thank you, Lainey, and real beauty speaks truth. She leaned her head on Elliot's shoulder, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. The air around them seemed to crackle with possibility, not just for their film, but for every woman who needed to hear this message of hope. You changed lives today, Elliot said softly, squeezing her hand. Lainey smiled, thinking of her daughters waiting at the hotel. No, she replied. God changed mine first. The car wound through the city streets as the afternoon sun painted everything in gold. After years of carrying other people's opinions like heavy stones, Lainey had finally laid them down. In their place was something better: peace, purpose, and the sweet taste of victory. Sunlight streamed through the hotel suite windows as Lainey sipped her morning coffee, watching her children play with their blocks on the carpeted floor. The quadruplets were building towers and knocking them down with squeals of delight, blissfully unaware of how their mother's world had shifted overnight. Jordan, Elliot's assistant, burst through the door clutching a tablet. "The phones haven't stopped ringing since dawn. Every major studio wants to meet with you today." Their eyes sparkled with excitement. "And Blake, his sponsors are dropping like flies. 3 major brands have already pulled their campaigns." Elliot emerged from his makeshift office, running a hand through his silver hair. "Universal just called. They're particularly interested in your vision for female-driven narratives." Lainey set down her coffee cup, her hands trembling slightly. After years of feeling invisible in Hollywood, the attention felt surreal. "What about our project? Beauty After Brokenness?" "The funding's secure," Elliot assured her. "In fact, we've had additional investors reach out. Your story resonated deeply." Throughout the morning, Jordan fielded calls while Lainey and Elliot attended virtual meetings. Miss Dolores took the children to the hotel's indoor playground, giving them space to work. By lunch, Lainey's schedule was packed with studio executives eager to discuss potential collaborations. Around 2 o'clock, Jordan received a message that made them frown. "Blake's requesting a private meeting. Says it's urgent, about the film rights." Lainey exchanged glances with Elliot. They'd known this confrontation was coming. "Where?" "The hotel's business center. He's already there." Elliot squeezed her hand. "You don't have to go." "Yes, I do." Lainey stood, smoothing her navy blue dress. "This needs to end today." The business center was empty except for Blake, who paced near the window. His designer suit couldn't hide his disheveled appearance. His face was drawn, his usual swagger replaced by nervous energy. When Lainey entered, he spun around. "Lainey, please!" His voice cracked. "Everything's falling apart. My agent's not returning calls. The press is destroying me. That superhero franchise I was up for, they're going in a different direction." He ran his fingers through his hair. "I need those film rights. It's my only chance to salvage something." Lainey observed him quietly, noting how different he seemed from the man who had once wielded such power over her emotions. "Why should I help you, Blake?" "Because..." He swallowed hard. "Because I'm sorry, really sorry. What I did to you was cruel. I let Hollywood's obsession with image poison everything good in my life, including you. Your apology comes from desperation, not genuine remorse." Blake's shoulders slumped. "Maybe. Probably. But I'm asking anyway. Name your price." Lainey moved to the window, looking out at the city below. She thought about all the young women who had reached out after the round table, sharing their own stories of emotional abuse and body shaming. "I have one condition." Blake straightened. "Anything. You'll establish and fund a national charity, one that supports young women who've survived emotional abuse, especially in the entertainment industry. Counseling services, legal aid, career mentorship, whatever they need to rebuild their lives." "How much?" Blake asked warily. $5 million initial funding, plus 20% of your earnings from the film, if it succeeds." He blanched. That's most of my savings." "Then perhaps you'll finally understand the true cost of breaking someone's spirit." Lainey's voice was gentle but firm. "Those are my terms. Take them or leave them." Blake stared at the floor for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "I'll do it. Have your lawyers draw up the paperwork." Within hours, their respective legal teams had prepared the documents. That evening, they gathered in Elliot's suite. The quadruplets were already asleep in the adjacent room, their soft breathing audible through the door. Blake's hand shook slightly as he signed page after page. When he finished, he looked at Lainey. "I really am sorry for everything." "I know," she said quietly. "I hope you find peace, Blake." After he left, Elliot wrapped his arms around her. "You okay?" "I need some air," Lainey whispered. She took the elevator to the hotel's rooftop garden. The night air was cool against her skin as she walked to the railing. Below, the city twinkled with countless lights. Above, stars pierced the darkness. Standing there, Lainey felt the last weight of her past finally lift. She had faced her tormentor not with anger or revenge, but with grace and purpose. The pain he had caused would now help other women heal. It wasn't just closure, it was redemption. A soft breeze carried the scent of night-blooming jasmine. Lainey closed her eyes, breathing in deeply. In that moment, she was neither victim nor victor. She was simply herself, whole, strong, and free. Over the next 4 weeks, the production of Beauty After Brokenness transformed from vision to reality. Lainey spent long days on set, her expertise shaping scenes with an authenticity that only someone who had lived through similar experiences could provide. "We need to get this moment exactly right," Lainey explained to the lead actress, Sarah, during a pivotal scene. They stood in a recreated gala setting, eerily similar to the night Blake had humiliated her. "The shock doesn't hit immediately. It's like watching yourself from outside your body, hoping you'll wake up from a nightmare." Sarah nodded, taking notes. "How did you find the strength to walk away?" "One step at a time," Lainey answered softly. Literally, each step towards the exit felt like moving through concrete. Elliot watched from behind the monitors, pride evident in his eyes. During breaks, he would bring her chamomile tea and quiet reassurance. "You're changing lives with this story," he would remind her. The quadruplets became beloved fixtures on set, charming the crew with their endless energy and innocent observations. Miss Dolores maintained order with her characteristic blend of warmth and wisdom, creating a makeshift classroom in one of the trailers where the children could learn and play between visits to their parents. "Mommy, why is that lady crying?" 4-year-old Sophie asked one afternoon, pointing to an actress who had just finished an emotional scene. "She's helping tell a story about being brave," Lainey explained, gathering her daughter into her arms. "Like you." Sophie's brother Marcus chimed in. "Yes, sweetheart, like many brave women." The days were long but fulfilling. Lainey worked closely with the costume and makeup departments, ensuring every detail reflected the journey from brokenness to healing. She insisted on realistic touches, the slight tremor in hands during moments of crisis, the careful way someone who has been shamed about their appearance moves through crowded spaces. "These details matter," she told Elliot during a late-night review session. "They're the difference between entertainment and truth." As the premiere approached, buzz around the film grew intense. Early screenings left viewers in tears, with critics praising its raw honesty and message of hope. The night before the premiere, Lainey stood in their walk-in closet, running her hands over the gown she had chosen, a flowing creation in deep purple that made her feel both strong and beautiful. "You ready for tomorrow?" Elliot asked, appearing in the doorway. "I think so," she smiled, "though I'm more nervous about keeping 4 toddlers clean and happy on a red carpet." The big night arrived with all the glamour Hollywood could muster. But this time, Lainey faced it on her own terms. She helped the quadruplets into their carefully chosen outfits, the girls in princess-like dresses that sparkled under the lights, the boys in miniature tuxedos that matched their fathers. "Remember," Miss Dolores said as she helped adjust Sophie's bow, "you all just be yourselves. That's more than enough." Their limousine arrived at the theatre to deafening cheers. Cameras flashed as Elliot stepped out first, then helped Lainey and the children emerge. The quadruplets handled the attention with surprising grace, holding their parents' hands and waving to the crowds with natural charm. "Mrs. Cross, over here. Lainey, look this way. Can we get a family photo?" The requests came rapid fire, but Lainey maintained her composure, guiding her family along the carpet with quiet dignity. When little Anna stumbled slightly, Lainey scooped her up without missing a beat, the gesture capturing photographers' hearts. Inside the theatre, the film unfolded to rapt attention. Lainey held Elliot's hand tightly during the harder scenes, drawing strength from his steady presence. The quadruplets, despite their young age, seemed to sense the importance of the moment, staying remarkably still in their seats. When the credits rolled, the audience erupted in emotional applause. People stood, many wiping tears, all turning to where Lainey sat with her family. The standing ovation lasted several minutes. The after-party was a whirlwind of congratulations and praise. Critics approached with glowing comments about the film's impact. Industry veterans who had once dismissed Lainey now sought her insights. But what touched her most were the quiet moments when women would pull her aside to whisper, "Thank you," or "Me too." By 11 o'clock, the children were fading fast. Elliot made their excuses and guided his family toward the exit. "One last thing," he said as they reached their car. "Who wants pizza?" The tired but happy family made their way home, where they changed into comfortable clothes and gathered in their bright, welcoming kitchen. Elliot ordered their favorite pizzas while the kids curled up on the oversized couch, fighting sleep. "Mommy," Sophie murmured as her eyes grew heavy, "you looked like a queen tonight." Lainey smiled, tucking a blanket around her drowsy children. "Thank you, baby." As the quadruplets finally drifted off, Lainey joined Elliot at the kitchen island. He handed her a slice of pizza, and they ate in comfortable silence, both processing the evening's events. "Remember the night we met?" Elliot asked softly. "At that small-town fundraiser?" "Of course," Lainey replied. "I was so broken then, scared to trust anyone. And now look at you. Executive producer, creative consultant, inspiration to thousands." Lainey thought back to that dark night when she had fled Hollywood, heart shattered, believing she would never find happiness again. The contrast between then and now took her breath away. She had not only survived, she had flourished. "It's more than I ever dreamed possible," she admitted, looking at her sleeping children, then back at her husband. "This life, this love, this purpose." Elliot pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. They stood together in their kitchen, the quiet broken only by the gentle breathing of their quadruplets and the distant sounds of the city. In that moment, Lainey felt the full circle of her journey, from darkness to light, from shame to strength, from broken to beautifully whole. The California sun bathed their backyard in warm, golden light, casting gentle shadows across the carefully arranged white chairs and flower-draped archway. Lainey stood at the kitchen window, watching the final preparations for the afternoon's ceremony. Her heart swelled as she observed Elliot directing the setup crew, his sleeves rolled up despite wearing one of his best suits. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind since the film premiere. Beauty after brokenness had touched hearts across the country, sparking countless conversations about self-worth and healing. But today wasn't about the movie. It was about something even more meaningful. "Mommy!" Sophie called out, tugging at Lainey's sundress. "Miss Dolores says we need to practice our flower presentation again." Lainey smiled down at her daughter, smoothing her curls. "Okay, sweetheart, let's go find your sisters and brothers." In the living room, Miss Dolores had gathered the other 3 children, each holding their part of the bouquet they would present during the ceremony. The elderly woman's eyes sparkled as she watched them practice their small procession. "Now remember," Miss Dolores instructed gently, "you walk slowly, just like we practiced. This is a very special day for your mama." The quadruplets nodded solemnly, their faces showing adorable concentration. At 4 years old, they understood this was important, even if they didn't fully grasp why. Through the open windows, Lainey could hear the arriving guests, familiar voices mixing with laughter and greetings. Cast members from the film chatted with local friends, while Jordan, Elliot's assistant, efficiently directed everyone to their seats. "It's almost time," Miss Dolores announced, gathering the children. "Lainey, honey, you look beautiful." Lainey smoothed her cream-colored dress, chosen specifically for its subtle elegance. The fabric flowed gracefully, making her feel both comfortable and confident, a far cry from the insecure woman she'd once been. The ceremony began as the afternoon sun softened. Guests settled into their seats, creating an intimate semicircle in the backyard. The quadruplets performed their role perfectly, walking in step as they carried their flowers. Little Marcus only stumbled once, quickly steadied by his sister Anna's helping hand. Elliot stepped to the podium they'd placed beneath the archway, his expression full of pride and love. The breeze ruffled his silver-touched hair as he began to speak. "3 years ago," he started, his voice carrying clearly across the gathered crowd, "I had the privilege of watching my wife overcome one of life's cruelest challenges, the theft of her self-worth. Today we gather to ensure her journey helps others find their way back to themselves." He paused, meeting Lainey's eyes with warmth. The Lainey Carter Initiative for Inner Beauty and Healing isn't just a foundation, it's a promise that no woman should face emotional abuse alone. A promise that true beauty isn't measured by Hollywood standards, but by the strength of one's spirit. Miss Dolores dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief as Elliot continued. "Through this initiative, we'll provide counseling, support groups, and educational programs. We'll fund research into the lasting effects of emotional abuse, and we'll create safe spaces for healing and growth." The quadruplets, now seated in the front row, watched their father with rapt attention. Sophie whispered something to Anna, who nodded seriously in response. "But most importantly," Elliot's voice softened with emotion, "this foundation will carry forward the grace, resilience, and wisdom that my wife has demonstrated throughout her journey. Lainey showed us all that beauty grows strongest in the places where we've been broken and healed." He gestured for Lainey to join him at the podium. As she rose from her seat, the gathered crowd broke into warm applause. The quadruplets jumped up too, eager to present their flowers. Marcus stepped forward first, offering his portion of the bouquet. "We love you, Mummy," he declared loudly enough for everyone to hear, drawing gentle laughter from the audience. One by one, each child added their flowers until Lainey held a complete arrangement of sunset-colored blooms. She hugged them close, careful not to crush the flowers, then stepped to the microphone. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady despite the emotions welling up inside. "When I fled Hollywood years ago, I thought I was running away from something. Instead, I was running toward everything I ever needed: love, family, purpose, and truth." She paused, looking out at the familiar faces. "This foundation represents more than my story. It represents every woman who has ever been told she wasn't enough, every person who has had to rebuild their sense of self-worth, every heart that needs to be reminded that they are beautifully and wonderfully made." The late afternoon light painted everything in soft gold as Lainey continued. "Through this initiative, we'll work to create ripples of healing that reach far beyond our community. Because sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply believing you deserve to be loved exactly as you are. After the ceremony concluded, guests mingled over refreshments, while the quadruplets played tag around the garden, their formal behavior giving way to natural childhood energy. Jordan efficiently coordinated with the catering staff, ensuring everything ran smoothly, while Elliot and Lainey greeted their supporters. As twilight approached, the gathering naturally wound down. Miss Dolores corralled the tired children for their baths, while the last guests departed with warm hugs and congratulations. Finally, in the peaceful quiet of early evening, the family gathered on their wide porch swing. The quadruplets, freshly bathed and in their pajamas, snuggled against their parents. The gentle motion of the swing combined with the day's excitement soon had all 4 children dozing. Lainey leaned her head against Elliot's shoulder, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky. The weight of her sleeping children and the solid presence of her husband filled her with profound contentment. "Can you believe how far we've come?" she whispered, careful not to wake the kids. Elliot squeezed her hand gently. "I always knew you were extraordinary. The world just needed time to see it too." Lainey gazed at her family, her heart full of gratitude. The moment felt perfect for sharing the truth she'd finally embraced completely. "I was abandoned for being ugly," she whispered softly. "But now the world sees the truth. Beauty grows where love is planted." Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.